Welcome to The First Turn. I'm your host, Hyena, and today, Llama and I are talking about This Week in Warhammer. If you like what you hear, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share, or let us know if there's something you'd like to hear us talk about. Alright, let's get to it.
Welcome to The First Turn. I'm Hyena.
I'm Llama.
And we've had a pretty good night. We're on about hour five of this podcast. This is the first hour we're going to record.
Yep. So you get the end of it. Probably a lot less good material.
Yeah. Sorry, unfortunately. Sorry, Matt.
We're talking Warhammer. Yeah, for you listening, Matt.
Yep. So what's happened this week? We had a little bit of news. We had our Horus heresy stuff back in full swing. Mm-hmm. Tons of new releases coming out.
Lots of Black Library stuff.
Which I'm like, it's cool that they're doing that Black Library stuff because literature for these settings is what really advances them.
It's important.
Right? It's what establishes true canon. It is important, even if most people don't read it. Because I want to say that maybe, 5-10% of people read books, maybe.
That was drawn from an advanced study of we did ourselves,
nothing.
Just guessing now.
But I 1 out of 20 people read the books for the Black Library, like whatever, maybe. But the information, because the books are released, get disseminated.
Yep.
Oh, is that the right word? Oof, sounds gross. And so the canon and the lore get spread, right? Which is still expands the setting and it still improves it, in my opinion. But we've got some model releases that coming out with this time around, which we had seen previously. One for both major games, right? For each of the major games. You had Hell's Last, which is the new Minkalesque model, and her retinue. It's getting released. Really cool, like character level models. Yep. And then you have a book that is.
I think that's one of the best parts of the Black Library things is when they're like, "Hey, this book series that's been out for a long time. By the way, here's models for that character."
I love it. It's super cool. Like, here's a physical representation of the character.
The Malineth Witchblade, did we have her before?
No. So she's been in some other stories, but she was a side character. She was a sidekick, basically, for
Gotrek?
For Gotrek. So she was in, what was it? Vermin Slayer.
Some Slayer.
One of the Slayer
There was also
books.
one called Gotrek and Mal.
Yeah. And they had
that's 3 stories. Okay.
So they had some stories together already, but they were Gotrek stories. This is her own, I assume. It's a Malineth Witchblade novel called Shade of Cain, and with it comes a model specifically for her. I wonder if they'll update the rules for Gotrek and her to be a regiment of renown for the game, which would be super cool. You bring Gotrek, you bring her in the same regiment together. They've got rules or whatever for them. It'd be super cool. So yeah, I mean, like I really dig how they kind of do that sometimes. The omnibus you're talking about is Gotrek and Mal, a series of stories containing the two of them. So
that's kind of how we got what's his name, Dark Oath,
Gunnar Brand.
Yeah,
those,
and then the Mechanicum we referred to. They did more Horus Heresy in plastic. You got the Thanatar Calyx Siege Automata.
We also saw the Ursarax cohort, which are the jump pack melee medium robots. Because you have the little guys, little tech thralls, right, that have little lightning guns. But you got the bigger guys that either have lightning guns or dark lances, whatever. These are the melee versions of those. And then we are getting that Thanatar Siege Automata with the super
heavy las and grum.
There you go. The heavy las cannon on his shoulder.
Super cool. Strike tank and the Venator. And then there's there's a character, a Magisterium, there's a
there's a bunch of Forge World resin Legion Praetors. Yeah, that's another thing. A bunch of characters.
I might get him at Adepticon. Are they out then? They're pre-order now, so they should be.
Yeah. So by Adepticon, which is another 4 weeks or so.
A little over 4 weeks.
I mean, there's plenty of stuff to pick up there. If you don't want to order it now, there'll be new releases there. I'm looking out for a few things. I'll tell you that much.
I'll tell you that for free.
There's a very specific event model that was released for store anniversaries that you just can't get. It was a White King. A redesign, basically, of the original White King with Tombblade, but a new way. Orthor half blood or so. I don't know, whatever the guy's name is. I don't remember, the half king, whatever his name is. It's like a named anniversary model that I'm trying to maybe see if they have. And then there's some Blood Bowl star players that I still want to get that they've never had.
Those are always pretty good. They just came out with another Nurgle one, and it's funny is I've never played the game in the new edition.
But,
wait, that's not true. We did.
But the two I want,
but there's a new Nurgle
for
one
for Blood Bowl. The two I want, they haven't had 6 years in a row. So I just don't think they really exist. So
it's not a new one.
no, it is not. I have been looking for it every single year, and they just don't have it ever.
Well, mine's a new Fat Man for Nurgle, so I'm going to get him, hopefully.
So we'll look out for that. And then, there's some other kind of event or like limited edition models that I probably want to pick up.
I'll end up picking up paints I don't need.
I'll obviously pick up, at least from the Games Workshop booth, the new event models that are specific to conventions.
Yep.
Which is
this year they're good ones.
They're good. They're so good. Yeah, I know the one that I want to get for sure is the Skaven Warlord.
Yeah.
Because the old Skaven Warlord is kind of moopy. The new one definitely has the new aesthetic update. And
Gotta get it.
It's great. And then there's a couple of things I'm looking for. I'm excited to see what we got going on though for Adepticon this year, because I know we've talked about it before.
We're in the countdown. We're 4
got,
weeks and some change.
Got a few weeks to go. I want to see how the layout goes. I want to see how this convention plays out. I mean, there's a content creator meet and greet the same time as last year that we'll probably stop by if we
figure out where it is.
Figure out where it is and you want to see us, that'd be fine. Kind of hang out and chat for a little while. We also know that there's going to be a painting area similar to last year. The Wapple.
Fort Wapple will still exist. They've confirmed. It obviously won't be under the escalator at the Schaumburg anymore. We'll see where they set it up in
You know what would
Milwaukee.
be wild is if it was still under the escalator at the
Renaissance Schaumburg. You have to drive all the way there to get there.
Drive an hour all the way there just to go and paint.
But wherever it is in the new location, the Baird Center, it'll be interesting to see if it's bigger. Because before, it was wonderful, first of all, because they provided racks of paints and lamps and seats, but it was for about 20, 25 people.
Yeah.
Anything more than that, and you're standing around waiting for a spot.
Well, there just weren't seats.
Yeah.
Right. There weren't spots for you to sit if there was more than about 25 people.
And then it was crowded. Like, it was a very condensed
It was
area.
kind of like it was unreliable if you tried to show up there to sit down and paint, unless it was 3 a.m. Like, there just weren't seats.
Yep.
And so it would be nicer if it was a little bit larger. That'd be
we'll see what that looks like now. Always a good time to sit and paint with a bunch of people who just want to pick your brain and you pick their brain, and from everything from techniques you're using, supplies you're using, and then even I always had people approach me because they were just interested in the case that I carried my paints in.
You have a very abnormal case that you've I'd say co-opted to be a makeshift paint case.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we talk about supplies, sometimes, and we talk about hacks, right?
Yeah.
This one specifically, I think, is pretty extraordinary because it's just something you just don't think of, right? When you're considering, like, well, storage is always a problem, right? Like, I run into that problem all the time.
Yeah.
I don't have enough shelf space. I don't have
and miniatures just become more dynamic and yeah.
So, but it also comes to when you're trying to paint, right, and trying to do hobby stuff. It's like, well, how do you organize your hobby stuff? You got to get cases, you got to get trays full for your paints and stuff.
If it's for your desk, you got these racks,
and it ends up being expensive eventually, right? Because just because things get made purpose built, call it, for paints, they're charged a premium.
Yep.
Right? Well, there are things you can do that save costs, but almost aren't made for it, but are the right scale, the right size, the perfect dimensions for your hobby stuff. I mean, we have like hacks. We've talked about hacks about like storing bits, right? Where you've got like bead carriers from like Hobby Lobby that are not meant for miniatures, but they work great because they're small compartments that are meant to separate out different parts and stuff, things like that. Well, your paint case isn't a true paint case.
Nope.
It's a cosmetics bag.
It's for someone who would like Avon style or whatever would do traveling cosmetic sales, and so it's this black like canvas exterior,
which is very similar to what Army Painter sells. It's similar to what GW
Battle
sells.
Foam
sells. Like it's a very similar style, material, dimensions kind of case.
And then inside it's this very firm, not flexible foam, and then it has all these dividers that you can rearrange infinite ways. And so I remember finding it. I don't know how I came up with the idea, but I saw it, bought it on Amazon. It was like $30. And
I'm sorry, what'd you say? How much? 130 bucks?
no, it was $30.
$30. Unlike your
If you buy a
Battlefront
hobby
one.
specific one, you're looking at 3 digits, and this was $30, and it was extremely it's a hard exterior with really firm foam, so you're not worrying about anything being damaged. It's a very durable case. And then I can bring with me about 50 paints, and I have 12 inks also, and some fluorescents.
And then about, 2 dozen brushes and tools.
Because the funny thing is, because it's cosmetics, it has a brush bag basically in the inside of the lid, so to speak. And
because you know what the cosmetic tool we use for dry brushing, makeup brushes,
right?
Painting it can take so much from cosmetics because they use very similar tools for it. Because we use similar techniques to paint models that we do on for cosmetics,
painting faces,
right? You paint a face. I mean, it's maybe that diminishes cosmetology a little bit, but it's very similar. Painting a face on a model is very similar to applying makeup, right? You lay down a foundation, you create dramatic highlights in specific
contours
places,
and
you contour the face, all that stuff. We do that with miniatures, and so it makes sense that some of the tools that are used for that are usable and useful to our hobby.
And in the lid of that, it's got that built-in, so if you're a traditional artist, you sometimes, like a chef, have this roll-up bag that you'll have all your brushes in. Those are your tools, your special tools, right? And a chef will have that with their knives.
You mean like a lock-picking tool kit?
Like
you
a lock-picking
roll
tool
it up,
kit.
and you get up there to paint. You just roll it out, and it chink chink chink, rolls.
And I have one that's that I got from an art store. If I need to bring my brushes alone, if I go to a paint class at a convention and I don't need to bring my own paints, but just need brushes, you bring that, right? Well, this has that built into the lid of this carrying case, and it's protected by a canvas flap. And so I can have tools, I can have brushes, sculpting equipment, I can have all that in there. And then the paints all sit in the case itself. They're all secure. And so it's every time I've brought that to Fort Wapple and I actually get a chance to sit on a paint, I get people who look at my paint job and that's cool, how'd you do that? And then they look at my paint case wait a minute, where'd you get that?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that becomes the focus, and they're super excited. It's I'm
But again,
I should patent this thing.
It's like if you're trying to go and get a new pan for your kitchen, right? You want to get a new cast iron pan.
Cast iron.
Don't go look in the kitchen section. Go look in the camping section, right? It's the same type of thing, but because it's not purpose built, it's cheaper.
It's much
right?
less expensive.
The same exact
thing.
cast iron pan in the camping section is half the cost of one from the kitchen section. It's that kind of thing, right? Because this isn't caught on as being here's a tool for this hobby specifically. We can't charge a premium. This is a tool for professionals doing this job. It's a much more affordable, much more reasonable kind of thing, even though it's not meant for
material.
Still works very well.
Yep.
Right? It's made for things that are so similar that it's of course it would work, But maybe we'll provide a link and see if you can find something yourself. Because it is super cool. But again, Adepticon's coming up. We've got, you've set up some painting classes you're going to be doing here and taking some notes to kind of improve on a few different techniques. I mean, last year I think you took a couple, maybe at least one.
Took a sculpting.
You took a sculpting with green stuff class,
Yep.
which how often do you use that skill?
Still looking for an opportunity to use it. Still looking for an opportunity. So, what's interesting, a side note, is so that class was with an individual who was one of the OGs. Sculpting with green stuff, and he made his name doing where he would radically alter models with green stuff, paint them, enter them, and he won a number of golden demons doing that. But it was some classic techniques that were in the 2-dimensional style, and what I mean by that is basically you take the green stuff, you put it on glass, and you put it on glass, and you sculpt these shapes, but it's really only one-sided. You're putting the detail on one side of the green stuff. The flat side is what you're then going to put on the model.
Sure.
So you're layering two-dimensional. It's kind of an older style of sculpting that a lot of companies used for their metal models.
But still pretty useful.
But
I mean, think about how many times you just want to like cover up a joint or something with a detail,
So-
a cloak or a.
So, and there's where it's still
Yeah.
useful. You weren't going to do like dynamic GW plastics that have negative space and three-dimensional detail. What it's useful for is it's like, you know what? I really want a purity seal here, but I need the ribbons to be longer, or I want a Dark Angel feather here, but I don't have an extra bit for it. I want to cover up where I shaved off this detail and now they're joint there, but it just looks awkward. And so I'm going to create this chain that goes here. That was the kind of stuff we learned. And so I haven't used it yet for much of anything, but it was still useful for that. And I got some really nice sculpting tools out of the deal.
Sure.
So when people look at those prices for classes that you sign up for at conventions, they are expensive. And I know expense is relative, but it's like you look at it and be like, oh, this is $90 for this painting class. It's like, yeah, but you get to take the bust home that you painted, you know,
Yeah.
and you can still
Which
work
means
on it.
that the cost of the class is also including a bust,
Right.
or a model, or a set of tools.
Yep.
So like there is some offset to the to the price.
you're paying a
Sometimes,
very skilled artist for their.
I mean, I think sometimes it is just like you are paying a lot for the artist, for a famous artist's time.
Yep.
Because that does happen,
And it's
sometimes,
valuable. Yeah.
right? But like a lot of times, there's also a bigger benefit than just the knowledge, you know, that goes along with those classes. How many did you say you have? One or two
Right
classes?
now,
you're
I
setting
only
up?
have one. And then a friend of ours who's hoping to show up there is in like 2 or 3, and we figure if several of us take classes, we can exchange notes and all
sure.
learn from it. Because I think in years past, we all go to this convention and we're playing in tournaments, we're entering competitions. I don't know how many of us really took classes. Like
Right.
we had our buddy from China who was here,
Yeah,
who
Bob.
took a whole bunch. He
Miss
took a
that guy.
whole bunch of classes.
Yeah.
And then the stuff he learned, he jumped right in with that information and was sitting down with us on our paint night and was just going to work on it. And yeah, and I think
It's another missing component to our paint nights that feel a little, I don't know, stale, lacking.
Miss Bob,
Bob
man.
is the glue,
Bob, whatever you're
man.
doing out there, man. Hope you're doing great.
I need that guy back.
And
That's for sure.
And the rest of us,
Bob.
so a bunch of us this year are doing classes, and so I'm hoping to get that where we all come back with an enthusiasm, which we usually do, but this will be even more. So I tried to pick a class, and I won't go over it now. I'll describe it after I take it, but I tried to go for a subject matter in painting miniatures that I don't work on enough or that I've avoided. And so I was like, I'm going to go do this with someone who's won demons in recent years. I'm going to go and I'm going to learn from them and then see if I can apply it later.
Technique you don't use very often. Interesting. Speed painting. Because you're slow.
What?
I mean, okay. I'm trying to guess this. This is interesting. This will be a fun game. You do plenty of freehanding.
Do I? Yeah, I do.
You do plenty of freehanding.
Okay.
You do plenty of color theory stuff. So you don't need to take a class really on that.
That can always be improved, though.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, especially like look at. We recently saw the results for an Infinity painting competition.
Great entries.
That you had submitted one for, and I mean, it was the first one you submitted for it like ever.
Yep.
And we saw kind of what was required from the top 3 entries to win.
Mm-hmm.
And the first entry was great. I mean, there's so many different colors, so many different techniques used.
Was that like Wolfman?
It was a Wolfman with like orange and blue goggles. And
Wonderful.
it was so cool.
Piece.
It was super cool.
So what's interesting about that piece that's funny is it was so they all 3 of the winners had that very magnificent Infinity style.
Yeah.
And
It's a very specific style.
It is.
If you look at it.
And that many...
I will say it's the same way that like War Machine, if you ever played that back in Mark II, had a very specific style of creating round, like taking round pieces and making flat surfaces out of them using freehanding almost. It was very, very bizarre.
Well, and that piece was so unique in that it was this beast instead of a
I don't know, a soldier,
instead of a
armored
soldier or a suit.
kind?
What are the suits called?
A tag.
Tag.
Yeah.
So instead of the things you normally associate with Infinity, it was like this Wolfman guy, and it was like, oh, that's odd.
I mean,
So-
it's still pretty typical wolf. I mean, it's called a dog.
it looked
man.
like Warcrow to me, but
It's a dogman of the Ariadne, I believe. It's if you don't know anything about Infinity lore, it's hard to explain. But the Americas, Ariadna, the America and like some of Europe had like a lot of like weird beast men.
Okay.
As part of their thing. It's like low technology and like high savagery.
But they're still competitive with tags.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, some of their tags were also like, there's no electronics. They're just suits that had bigger guns. It was like that. It was kind of strange. They were a low tech, like low cost, no special war gear kind of faction. The Ariadna.
Well, when I looked at the winning piece, which was, I think all of the top three could have won, and they did win. But I mean, each of those top three could have been first place. They were really good. That was probably super tough for the judges because it was really a photography contest.
Right.
So they were relying on picture submissions. But that one that won, he did it a little different. When you look at it up close, he did a lot of texture on the fur, a lot of texture on the clothing, a lot of texture on the gun, and
he almost treated it like a bust. Is what I was noticing.
There was a lot of micro texture, micro stippling, and you could see it when you zoomed in, where it could look rough, but that's just it. Is like when it's at that distance where it's in the photo or whatever, it reads to the eye. Super dynamic. The fur especially had high contrast in it. But that's my favorite thing is if win or lose in a competition, I look at the stuff that won no matter what, and
right.
I want to see what they did, be able to recognize what they did, and then I want to try it. It's super inspiring to me. And then the second place was the very famous Miniatures Den. He's a guy who Twitch streams all the time, who I've talked to, who I guess has gone by a nickname similar to Llama in his country, because when I went into his Twitch stream once, he called me his cousin.
What?
Yeah. And he painted the lovely tag on the sand.
Right.
Was a really good-looking piece. Very warm theme all the way through, sliding on that like sand dune kind of thing. And then the third place was that unit.
Yeah.
So all three of those were very ambitious projects, but I had never entered this. I didn't know what they were looking for. I just did a single infantry guy, and while I painted it well, these three pieces
they went above and beyond.
They were so much more ambitious, and they went above. And I absolutely loved all three of them. So check those out if you haven't. The Corvus Belli Infinity Miniatures Painting Contest. Yep. Go look at them.
But okay, so we check off freehanding. Don't even do that. You've already done your green stuff sculpting. Don't need that. You already know how to do like texturing of micro stippling and cloth, textures. You don't need that. Non-metallic metals. I mean, we could all get better at that, but you've got a pretty good hand at that. Your source lighting, I think you do pretty good at that already. I don't know. Shines, maybe something to do with secondary light sources, color choice outside of because I know you extol a bit. That's a good word about the merits of how certain famous painters, your Angels, your Sergio Calvos, choose their colors, and it's outside of color theory. There's more depth of choice of colors, and there's nuance to like choosing another color to put into a secondary or tertiary reflection on something. And in the middle of an armor panel that's blue, you put a red reflection, and it makes sense. Or you want to paint silver, right? But you choose no whites or blacks in your color palette. Yeah. It's all blues and purples and greens, and it somehow still reads as silver, like true neutral silver. It's like, how does that work? So I could see you taking classes on something like that to try to learn some of that. But beyond that, I feel like a lot of stuff you've kind of already landed on, right?
Well,
so I don't know.
It's there's aspects of
basing. Basing could be improved.
Well, I don't even know if it's basing, but like composition,
unit composition or model composition. Yeah.
Now I didn't find a class for that, but so it's funny is there's like an aspect of every category that I was like, if I picked one, class, there was an aspect in almost every category that I could. So the first one I was going to choose, it was like It was it had to do with face structure and paint. But then
you don't need that.
But the thing that was silly, and I don't say that immodestly, it was like, well, I do faces pretty well, and I understand the structure of the face, and that comes from not only because I practice them so often, because I paint a ton of faces and then let that model go, but it was also like, it goes back to even when I did do art classes in like high school, my favorite subject was when we were doing portraits. And so it was, you were looking at a face that's in a still position, and you had to like getting the charcoal or whatever medium you were using to make the portrait wasn't about doing an outline and drawing an eyeball correctly and drawing a nose correctly. It was like,
that's how I do it.
It was getting the volumetrics, which are the shapes and forms in 3-dimension, and then shadow and light. It was doing that correct, not looking at it as an eyeball, as a nose, as a mouth. It was looking at shape, volume, light, and shadow. And like once I started then working on faces on miniatures, it was the same idea. And then I've worked so hard on those that I felt like if I took a class, all I'd be doing is like spending money to sit in there, paint a face impressively, and then like show the teacher and like, look what I did. And that's, again, it sounds immodest, but I was like, I don't think that would be beneficial.
Where's the value in that?
And what am I pushing myself to?
Yeah. You're not learning anything from that. You're not improving. You're not seeing new techniques. Like, again, not immodestly, but when you've got a skill that's probably beyond what the teacher is teaching to the class, not saying your skills are beyond what the teacher's skills are,
right?
But in order for a teacher to teach a class, they have to make it achievable and reachable for all the students. They're not going to teach you, like, there's not some like general class you can choose that is like advanced face techniques for everyone that's reached this level, which maybe there is, but like that's so specific that it's not something you just like slide right into.
And let's be real, like classes aren't cheap, and if you wanting to learn something, you're going to spend your money, and you want it to be worth it,
right?
And I felt like there wasn't much I was going to learn in a class about faces, So I did pick one. And do you want to know, or you want to keep guessing?
Have I gotten close yet?
You've said it.
So is it one of the ones that I claimed you had already?
You claimed almost every area.
Needed that you've already accomplished?
Well, so I picked one that was called painting deliberate texture.
Okay.
And the description.
Yeah.
So it's taught by a gentleman who has won Golden Demons in recent years. And
is his name Richard Gray?
It is not.
Oh, that'd be a shame. That'd have been fucking cool. Sorry.
That would have been.
We love Richard Gray.
I love Richard Gray.
We talked to him last Adepticon.
I got to talk to him last year,
which was super cool.
Around the
which
cabinets,
is super cool. Really nice guy. Phenomenal painter. Maybe hasn't had enough time to do painting this last year. He's entered a couple times, but it hasn't been as many entries as he's normally provided. But there's lots of really cool stuff out there. Check out his Instagram at Richard Gray.
Yeah.
A lot of really cool
he goes
stuff.
By Demon Rich, I think.
Demon Rich.
Gray.
Yep.
Yeah. He's got a Patreon that. You know what's neat about his Patreon? Or no, it's his website. It's Richard Gray Creations. By the way, he's not an affiliate or sponsor.
No,
but it's
just a cool dude. But shouting out.
Yeah, he was super nice. He explained a process he did for his piece of the Squig Rider Goblin.
Yeah,
boss.
it was a Mangler Squig, I think.
It
was a giant cave squig.
No, it was the boss on the.
Is the boss on giant cave squig? It was one of the larger squigs, but it was like a Moonclan Grot boss riding it.
Yeah, and
kind of a blue-gray, kind of gradient sort of.
And he got a demon in his category for it, and like, what's neat is when you see the photos, they look a certain way, and they pop in the colors, and it's like they look different in person. They do, and it could be shocking to you at first.
I mean, a lot of models actually do, and that is a shock to I think a lot of people.
It is.
It's painting and seeing your models in the display case lighting is so much different than your ideal lighting that you're taking photos with. Because two things: lighting in ideal circumstances is a lot more. There's a lot more lumens. Call it. There's a lot more light to be able to like illuminate the details of your model. And two, cameras are evil. Cameras are deceiving. They auto correct. They auto filter. They auto. They change the look of your model.
They change the values, and sometimes they even go against you, where like they will see the transparent layers showing through or something,
which
weird.
is I think a valuable thing if you're trying to paint and like because
critique your own work,
because judges are going to look at your models under an actual lens. right? And if a lens can pick up your shallow, transparent layers, it's not going to look great, right? So it is a valuable tool, but it also can be misleading because it can make your model look worse than it is. It can make your model look better than it is, which I think is even more dangerous.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of models where I've taken photos where it's like, this looks great, and then I let it sit for a week or two, and I look at it again,
Pick
and
it
I'm
up
like,
again, you're like,
holy crap, this thing is rough. That happens to me all the time. Part of that is because paint layers take a long time to dry. And so, like, maybe the layers weren't dry enough before, I took the photo, and then now that they're dried, there's big globs of poorly blended, blocks of color.
Right. There's like stain lines.
Right.
And like, so the thing for me was like, the cool thing about Richard's website is if you want to just see if the content is worth it for you, you can do a thing where you buy a day. You buy 24 hours. It's like $3, and then you can look.
I spend more than $3 on a coffee.
Right, people spend that on their way to work, right in the drive-through at the gas station, and like getting a drink to go into work. And it was like I just would do that, and it's like you consume as much as you can, and his stuff, he'll do full form, like long form, I should say, videos where you can watch him paint pretty much in unedited fashion. Or it'll be slightly edited to get rid of any of the stuff in between. But what's always visible is his palette and his mini, and then he'll talk over it and explain what he was doing. And when I met him in person, I happened to be around the backside of the case. We were up real late. Some guys were playing Magic: The Gathering, and we Commander, right? And they were playing in one of the ballrooms, and then they kind of kicked us out. And then for some reason, I was up later than usual, and I decided to wander up to the case and met some people, but I'm walking around just looking at stuff, and I get to, because now it wasn't crowded, I could look at everything close, and I got to his piece, and I'm looking at it, and it was like, well, I remember this from the Instagram photos and from his website, and the photos make the colors look punchier and all that stuff, but I actually like the look of it in person better. I think when I could look at the paint job in person and see the human touch and recognize what they did, I learned more from that. And then I'm looking at his piece for a while, and I was looking,
and lo and behold, the man shows up himself.
Yeah, because I was sitting there looking at like, well, he did this transition from blue to red, and it didn't create a purple color where it blends. That to me is so simple, but how he pulled that off. And right when random person who I didn't know was standing next to me was like asking me questions, and so I'm just maybe that's what happens at 3 a.m. And I was like, man, I'm fascinated by this piece because of this. And then all of a sudden, the man pops up behind me, and he's like, "Do you want to know how I did that?" And it was like, oh man,
you know what? I don't believe it. I think you were hallucinating. I think you created him in your psyche. I think he was not actually there. Yeah. You were talking to yourself about it.
And I think he was actually saying that in response to like how the judges put their little dots on the cards or whatever. And but then I asked him about his piece, and he was super nice, and he talked to me about it. He told me later on Instagram he liked my piece, which was a diorama I'd entered. But yeah, check out his work. But no, he's not teaching the class I'm going to be in.
Okay. But regardless, Richard Gray, who we brought up initially for that reason, does a lot of this micro stippling, a lot of micro textures, and a lot of his pieces.
Very small brush, very accurate.
Create effects, right? They create. They trick the eye to create colors and highlights and spots like that without actually needing to be smooth at all. Right, and it almost creates a more believable effect when you do use texture, as opposed to like perfectly creamy, smooth transitions between colors.
And because like you can use texture to create the materials. So like he'll do his micro stippling, micro glazing for non-metallic metal, and he'll do it for fabric, and he'll do it for skin, and he'll do it for fur. But each one will have a result that's different.
Right.
And with the texture, he can make each of them believable. Now, he'll push that to an extreme when he's doing a competition piece. But when he's just doing a for funsy one, you'll be able to see slight imperfections, but in a way that like still reads exactly like the material you want. Now, the person who's teaching this class had some also recent Golden Demon winning pieces. And when I read what the class was about, I sat there and thought to myself, like...
Is it someone we know, by the way? Do you remember who it is? Is it a name I'd recognize? You can just say yes or no. I'm not going to guess.
But won one at, I think at Hours. but at North American Golden Demon last year, and I looked at the piece, and it was to an incredible standard. And then, but the big thing was like I was reading the description, and it was like when you've got fabric or an empty space on something like a horse, and so you want it to look like fur or a pelt or something on an animal, but it's not necessarily sculpted in.
Right.
Like
because you think of a horse, right, on the haunch. The horse has hair. It's completely covered in hair.
Right.
Even though it looks smooth and it's one color that's like chestnut brown, it's covered in hair. Like, you don't want to just leave it just brown.
Right, and that's going to reflect light differently than fabric. That's going to reflect light differently than metal. That's going to reflect light differently than whatever. And so when I saw that this was a class about that, I was like, well, I really don't do that much on minis enough, where I announce the presence of fur or fabric or even dented metal or something like that. And so I was like, a class that's like that. Now, I don't know how long the classes are. They give these weird long windows for them. Maybe it's like a workshop that's all day. But I was like, I don't do much of that. So I do mostly smooth texture. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take this because I think I could learn something that I can then add to my toolbox later on. So I'm really excited for stuff like that. And we've got a friend of ours who's planning to go, who's taking a couple of classes.
You're gonna like take all the classes and compare notes,
and we're gonna exchange
teach
notes
each other,
and teach each other some stuff, and then spend a day hopefully at Fort Wapple. And
that's what it's all about, right? Too, like that's part of the hobby, right? Is teaching other people what you know and what you've learned and where they can improve, and without being a dick. Right, that's the fine line you have to.
I know this.
You have to cross is you have to try to impart your knowledge and what you've learned onto someone else who has no concept of the knowledge you've learned, right?
And you just learned it.
Learned it. Or if you've been working on something for a while, right, and you know how to paint something, don't kind of like explain it to somebody. Like present it in a way that they're able to conceptualize with
and that's
the things
the big thing
they
is
know.
we're also excited because this is going to be a new Adepticon at a new place.
I'm kind of worried a little bit that we're not going to have as much time to get just hobbying done and just like sitting and hanging out.
Right.
Because it is a new place.
It is.
It's something we're going to be excited to go explore.
Exploration,
a little bit, and find some new places to sit down and eat and hang out and go and
sights to see,
that kind of thing. And so like I'm worried that we're going to want to do so much stuff in this new city that
4 days will go by. Like
we're not going to have time to do everything we want to do, or we're not going to have time to just hang out at the convention center like we want to. So it makes me like
a little bit anxious.
Wonder if they're going to I would love it if maybe they extended the convention an extra day at some point, to make it longer. That'd be super cool. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I mean, 5 days is a bit much, right? But when you think about it, it's like, all right, day one, Wednesday, is get your badge, get your swag, get yourself settled in.
Warhammer preview event.
Warhammer preview.
Otherwise, nothing's really open on that one.
Like that day is kind of a waste day. You don't that's a travel day, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't count that really as really anything. Your Thursday is your first day of the true convention. That's the day you want to get in there and go look at everything. Which I purposely did not choose to sign up for anything on Thursday because I want that first day to be like full convention experience.
Wide-eyed wonderment.
Absolutely. But I'm in events on Friday and Saturday, and for most of the day, and not in the evening, but it'll cover most of the daytime. So I don't know if I'll get into the convention center Friday, Saturday.
And you found out that you're playing in 2 tournaments.
I mean, I knew I was playing in 2 tournaments. I had forgotten.
Yeah.
And so I do have some work to do, getting stuff prepped for those 2 tournaments. I think I'm going to try to double dip on my time by having the 2 tournaments use some of the same models, so I don't have to paint as many, and that'll be fine. I went super elite with my armies, so I have to paint fewer models again. Some of them were already started. That helps.
You 2-for-1 some stuff. Yeah,
exactly. So I'll be able to
So if you could recommend for people, if they do that, where they sign up for 2 events, maybe they forget.
Yeah.
But they're in kind of the same game universe.
Right.
What's a good way they can maximize the efficiency of doing that?
Just, be smart about it.
The end.
Make some compromises. Don't go optimal. Like that's what I can recommend is
because you played in 2 events where you've got an Age of Sigmar force, but within that Age of Sigmar force is a Warcry warband that can also be played in the Warcry event you're playing.
I will be. Yeah,
so that's pretty clever.
So I'm double dipping on my time by getting the Warcry warband painted. That will also double as 130 points of my 1,000-point army that I'm playing in a narrative event. Right. So I'm bringing the same models for 2 different events contained within the same subset of models. So I have to do less. And then the army I went for with the 1,000-point army is a very elite army.
Low model
and
count.
so it ends up being, let me count it, 13, 16, 17, 18. Is it 18 models? Oof. That's low.
But 1,000 points?
Yeah, 1,000 points.
That's not that low in Age of Sigmar.
2 characters, 1 unit of cavalry, an 8-man unit of infantry, 3 Fellbats. So that might give you a hint of what I'm bringing. I'm bringing my Soul Blight. It's not that many models. And then 3 Vargeist. 21 models total for a 1,000-point army.
For 1,000 points. I mean, sure.
It's elite.
You could have brought clan rats.
I could have brought 1,000 clan rat. Almost. Now, 800 clan rat. No, that's not right.
And said, we got their rat.
80 is only, 480? 160 clan rats? And 1 hero? Yeah, I could have bought so many bodies. I don't want to do that. You know what? Actually, I could do plague monks. I have 80 plague monks painted.
Do you think there are more?
Event.
Which do you think are more? Are there more rodents in which scenario? Are there more clan rats in 1,000 points or more mouse clicks in a 10-minute game of League of Legends?
I mean, it's definitely 10 minutes of League of Legends, especially considering which mode you play. Yeah, definitely League of Legends. I mean, when I play a game like that, I'm looking at like 300 APM.
But do you think with your mouse clicking, you could actually defeat all the clan rats coming at you in a half an hour or 10 minutes or whatever?
I mean, not if they're coming from more than one front. It'll be one place at a time.
Anyway,
but yeah, so my prep is established of what I'm going to bring. It's not going to take that long.
Well,
it might be the least time I've given myself to prep for an event, but it's the least taxing of a task I've given myself.
Well, and
because the 1 year I literally it was Skaven, and I literally had to do 80 clan rats or 80 plague monks the night, like in the 2 days before the event. It was so many. It was stupid. I don't know why I did that.
Well,
it was stupid.
And that's a way to approach it, I think. If people want to think of how to get the most out of a convention, and you do you, right? But it's like, well, you're playing in 2 events, but you left yourself time to still just enjoy the convention and enjoy the city.
Right. Like I said, I still have the evenings free.
And then in the 2 events you're doing, you manage to use the same subset of models, and so you can maximize getting them done, having them prepped, bringing just one small pile of models to play 2 different events. That's a really good way to do it. If you want to make it feel more like a vacation than it is a chore. Because I think sometimes it's you can get trapped in that, where you get stuck in so many events, so many classes, or one massive event that eats up all your time. And then you've got this
champions events.
And then you've got this overwhelming amount of models you got to paint, and it's one thing if that's what you've been living for, is preparing for that. But I think if you just want to kind of casually go and experience a little bit of everything, that's a pretty good way to handle it. I think when you found a way to incorporate your Warcry warband into your 1,000-point army to play 2 events, that's a pretty good way to knock it out.
That's pretty good. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I haven't played Warcry in a very long time, and so it's going to be very interesting to play. I might go try to study up a little bit. About how to play the game
play
better.
In the shop. Yeah,
I haven't played
Warcry. I've never played Warcry.
I've played a lot.
Or wait, I played like the starter set for the first edition of it. Like,
it's been a long time.
Because I played my iron. What were they called? Golems.
Yeah. That was one of these starter. That was one of the launch war bands.
Yeah,
it was them versus the Untamed Beasts.
Yeah, I played like that. Yeah. I played it at a convention and then played it in the shop once. That's my only experience. I know the rules have changed. I know, and now there's so many more warbands.
There's a 2nd edition, and there's tons of stuff now available to play in the game. Not just the bespoke warbands. There's tons of other supported units. Hopefully,
Have we mentioned they still haven't talked about what's coming for Warcry?
Hopefully, leading up to a 3rd edition or something for the game, because it is still a lot of fun. I know it's a lot of releases, and maybe they don't want to support so many individual kits that barely fit into different armies.
Yeah.
Unless, they just roll them in proper,
I actually expect some of them, like Rotmeyer Creed, will end up in an Age of Sigmar box when they get when Maggot can get their book.
Yeah. I mean, that unit specifically, it seems like they have made space in the army for that as a staple.
Yeah.
Right. And some of them don't seem like they're going that way, but they could. Right, like especially like very specialist units like the Fyreslayer ones, which Fyreslayers is an army that actually I've heard some rumors about that I don't know if I buy as accurate for Age of Sigmar, but we can talk about that here in a minute. But there are certain units that like they fill a very specific role that could absolutely be rolled into an army and just be a staple. I look at the Wilder Corps Hunters for Age of Sigmar. I could absolutely see that with the Hounds and the crossbow guys being just a core unit in that army.
Yeah.
Because an army really doesn't have that much from the human side, because all of the free guild stuff has been replaced by new models. They cut a lot of other stuff. This unit kind of fulfills this scout role of a light unit that moves better and is resilient to shooting and whatever, and it can do objectives and things like that. And its damage output's not great. Its durability per point is not great, but it fulfills a role, right? Like that's what I want to see out of some of these Warcry warbands is like if it fulfills a role for an army, why not keep them around even if you're planning on retiring them or something like that. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But talking about Fyreslayers, there was a few rumors bouncing around that Fyreslayers will not be receiving their own battletome this edition.
What?
Which is
I didn't even hear that.
Which is like, that's weird. A proprietary army, call it, for Age of Sigmar, one that was released within Age of Sigmar's
1.0, yeah,
right, is not going to be getting an update to their army rules is a little bit of a weird rumor, but it can mean multiple things, right? I think 3 likely scenarios. 1, they don't get a battletome this edition, but maybe 4th edition, the next one, is compatible, and they'll get one next edition.
Are we in 4th?
No, we're in 3rd. No,
we are in.
What
4.
edition are we in? 4th?
We're in 4.
5th, then. There you go. The next edition.
5.
I mean, that's one scenario, right? Doesn't get one for 4th, they get one for 5th, right? Because 5th edition rolls around before all the battletomes are updated. That's a scenario. They used to do that though.
They did,
right?
But that would be a bad way to go back.
I agree.
What's the rumor? Keep going.
However,
here.
that's one scenario. Scenario 2, they cut Fyreslayers from the game. That's a wild one, right? I can see it being possible.
They're popular.
If the sales aren't good, if they don't feel like expanding the army to make it more robust, and they choose to just cut it instead, I mean, that would suck. That would really suck. But that's scenario 2. Scenario 3, they aren't their own book. They get rolled into a dwarf holds book. They get rolled into something else that's a conglomerate army. Your Cities of Sigmar, your Orc War Clans, something like that, where it's a dwarf specific book that encompasses.
Caradron's Fyreslayers,
maybe
Ironweld, kind of all.
Maybe, yeah, I could see it.
I could see them doing that, a dwarf holds book or something like that, and
especially with like the white dwarf being a thing that combines them with Gotrek being there. Like I could see them advancing the story and making dwarfs as a faction, one encompassing thing.
So
right?
Here's a thought with that. If that's the case. So I think that would actually be the most likely of the scenarios.
That's why I saved it for 3rd. The least shocking.
I could see that, and it would be also exciting.
Right.
I don't think they're going to cut them, but if they combined them, the neat thing is you now, although almost artificially, expand the rosters of 2 small roster armies, just like the Orc War Clans. So you put 2 into 1, and they're 2 very different styles, but now they're in one book. You can play them combined, or you can play them separate, just like Orc War Clans, right? You can play them combined or play them separate. But that gives them also room, along with Bone Splitters and Beasts going back to Old World, Now, if they've got new army concepts,
Right. Like your rumored Umbraneth Shadow Elves, like your similar aesthetic a little bit to the Fyreslayers, kind of fiery
Chaos
Dwarves. I mean, I'm hoping they're not going to cut Fyreslayers because Chaos Dwarves have a very similar aesthetic.
Right.
I'm hoping that's not the case, right? Because if you think back to old Chaos Dwarves, they had like the Kadai Fireborn fire
They might
elemental
not bring
units
those back,
and
though.
stuff like that. But that was part of that army roster. Now, that is a very different version of Chaos Dwarves,
Yep.
right? And so like they might not have that stuff they're not stepping on toes in any way. But the rumor I think is a little misleading. So if you've seen it or you heard it yourself and you think, oh, well, the Age of Sigmar is dying or whatever because they're cutting, brand new armies, not brand new armies, but like bespoke armies, that's not a great sign. I think there's more, it's a more complicated thing going on than just an army being cut. Because cutting armies is never great, as we saw. Beast of Chaos, Bone Splitters, Sacrosanct Chamber of Stormcast, none of that felt good. I don't think they would have waited this long to say, hey, oh, by the way, Fyreslayers are also getting cut. With making those kinds of announcements, this would be a really weird thing to do. To be like decide later on that's like, oh, this army that's for this game, we're just not continuing it. Instead of updating it.
Well, and we saw from event numbers that the idea that Age of Sigmar is a failed experiment or dying is not true.
I mean, there's been plenty of independent sites that have put out numbers about it recently that say, oh, by the way, while haters, I will call them that, haters of Age of Sigmar, because it's like, all right, you got your old world back, get off of it.
Yep.
Right? What is your vendetta against this game succeeding? You got your old world back, go play it.
Right.
Right? The haters will say, oh, well, this was a failed experiment. This is just proof. I don't buy that because when we look at, again, these sites that have these independent data of like player turnouts and sales and stuff like that, all we see is growth.
Growth in Age of Sigmar.
There's more players every year. There's more sales. There's more people getting interested in it. There's more people showing up. And so it's like, no, the propaganda of like this is failing is just plain wrong.
Right.
And like I said, we've seen that from well-established sites, and Goonhammers and
Warhammer,
those types of sites that kind of keep their pulse on the lifeblood of games specifically. So
yeah, and so I could see them being merged into something. And that's
I think it's a bad assumption that's like, oh, they're leaving the game because there's no battletome because a rumor said from a reliable rumor monger that they're not getting their own book called Fyreslayers.
Right.
It's like, but there's other be more creative. There's other reasons that could be the case.
But that's the same thing as like Ironjaws no longer have their own book called Ironjaws. But guess what? Ironjaws still exists.
Guess what? Ironjaws aren't getting a battletome this year, this edition. Yeah, because it's Orc War Clans.
But they're still there. You still have Ironjaws, and you can still play them just as Ironjaws, or you can combine them with these Cruel Boys.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just don't buy that. I think that's probably what's happening. That could be even how they're going to approach these factions going forward.
Kind of combine them into like similar. I mean, I think that also makes it, if they were to choose to do this, make a battletome a much more palatable price point for a player, where it's like, okay, well, if I buy this battletome, I actually get access to two different armies.
Two armies now.
And then maybe a combined third army that I didn't have access to before.
And guess what?
That feels a little better.
And now if you were that Caradron Overlords player, if that's where they go,
right?
Or if you were a Fyreslayers player, because maybe they'll combine Fyreslayers with whatever the new Chaos Dwarves are, who knows? But it's like, now it's like, well, now you have this reason to dip into another army that you weren't before. That's a good sales tactic even.
Yeah.
So that could be a quality of life improvement and a way to expand the roster without deciding we need to come up with 6 new kits for an army.
I still hope there are some new kits for the army.
Yes, 100%.
I mean, both armies that would potentially be combined because they're both kind of smaller rosters.
But I guess what... So I'm gonna rabbit trail a bit off of this topic or on the piggyback of this topic, and that's with the rumors themselves is I've noticed that when rumors get started about anything happening on the Games Workshop side especially, the rumor is always towards the negative. People assume the worst is going to happen. From the days of ITC was deciding to work with GW to organize tournaments, people were like, oh, GW's going to take over ITC and they're going to start resin checking models and blah, blah, blah. None of that ever happened. In fact, Frontline Gaming and the ITC is still independent. Games Workshop just partners with them for the US Open events.
Yeah, it helps keep the events consistent. It helps keep the stat tracking consistent. It helps keep the mission packs consistent. It's just better for the players in general.
Well, and they made an announcement, by the way, that the season now, the ITC season now, goes from World Championship to World Championship, not LVO to LVO, which makes sense.
Yep.
So it's like how WWE does WrestleMania in March.
WrestleMania. Oh, yeah.
does WrestleMania in March.
Right.
And so, but that's when their season of stories end and they get ready to start their new season of stories, right? So now the World Championship is going to decide the end of the ITC season, and the day after is the start of the new one.
Okay.
So
I like that.
So
because their Worlds is in the summer, right?
No, the World Championship's end of November.
Oh, what am I thinking of? What's in the middle of summer? I thought they had, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. End of November.
Yeah.
Okay.
So instead of January, which was LVO, they're now doing end of November. So either way, but what I'm piggybacking off this is there have been rumors about Golden Demon changing. One of the big ones they talked about is unit entries. So like Age of Sigmar unit or Warhammer 40k unit or squad. People were saying that, well, they're not going to let you submit units on like diorama style bases anymore, where you create a scene and you put 3 to 5 models or whatever on a base.
So you're saying that they're going to make you submit a diorama in the diorama category?
Right. So now Games Workshop themselves didn't announce this rule, so it's just a rumor. But the rumor was spread, and here's the thing: it could be true. They might enforce it for Essen in October, which they announced Essen is going to be their Golden Demon Part 2 every year.
Right.
Or next year it'll be implemented in both. But there's no Games Workshop employee saying this. There's no Warcom article saying this. It's just people speculating. And then the first response and the first fluid discussion about it is always negative. So they're like, oh, so people who are getting ready to submit their unit entries for Milwaukee, you might have to move them to a plaque because you can't, or on a single base because you can't have them on their individual model bases because you can't have them on a diorama scene. It's like, nope, there's nothing in the rules for this Adepticon.
This Adepticon's Golden Demon rules, the rule packet has already been released.
Correct.
They're locked in. They're not going to change. They're not going to move the goalpost on you in the final hours.
Right.
Right. Like it is what it is right now. Like they're not changing that.
And they're
going forward, yes, I hope they do change it. Because you know what? Some of the categories are so muddled with units that could be, or things that could be in either category, in multiple category, that it's like there needs to be a clear, more well-defined rubric for the judges decide which category you're in, not the player.
Well, and the thing is, like, I think the intent of the categories isn't muddled, but the competitors submit entries almost with the intent of like tiptoeing on a couple of categories, and then they on a technicality get into a category they wanted to get into, and the judges are like, okay.
Like how many times did we see like 5 individual models on their own bases that are the same Warcry warband? This is probably about last year. Where it was the same unit of 5 like character models were both in Underworld, like Age of Sigmar unit, and in Warcry. Like they were the same exact models in 2 separate categories, displayed and presented in the exact same way. It's like, who decided which category you were in? The player gets to decide? No. Let's say that this unit specifically is always going to be in this same category with all the other models of this unit in the same exact category. Now, if you take all those models and you put them on the base together, I mean, do you get into diorama at that point? Maybe.
And they may do that in the future, because I think the base, the diorama or the scene rather that people were creating for their unit, which we saw.
I can think of a couple of examples that got Golden Demons.
Yep.
There was a like was it Crimson Fist or was it Ultramarines? There was a blue kind of Marine unit that was kind of like, it was a Terminator and a Blade Guard vet. And, and it won a silver, I think.
Yep.
But there were 5 of those models were all on the same like round plinth.
Yep.
And it was a
it's
unit.
Right. It was in 40K unit.
But it was like, this is clearly a diorama. Same with like a unit of like, I don't know, Free Guild
That
guys.
Tacoma Bronze, yep.
Tacoma Bronze were all on the shared base that were in a scene together.
And they're not on their gaming bases.
Right.
Yep.
And so like that's a diorama.
Yeah.
But that model, that one single giant model conglomeration might not have been in unit or diorama respectively. It's all up to the whim of the person entering and the who's taking the form and stuff. So there needs to be better guidelines for that kind of thing.
Yeah, and whether or not we agree with how they decide, the fact that they need to lay down what goes where is just, once they decide, then there's no confusion.
Right.
Lack of confusion
and be consistent about it.
Right. Lack of confusion and consistency are better than whether or not you like it.
Right.
So there's a rumor that they're going to change that for units. Okay, but that doesn't apply to Adepticon.
Right. But it's in the same way that they changed the ruling on how 3D printed models work and how custom sculpted models work and all these things. Like, they're allowed to change their rules.
They are. But my beef with the rumor mill is that people assume that because this rumor comes out, that means they're going to spring this on you at the last second and then disqualify your unit because you entered it.
I will say, there are people out there that want that to be the case.
Yeah.
They want to have like that as sort of a fallback excuse for not doing well.
Correct.
Because that provides a great, very convenient reason for like, well, the judges didn't like my entry because they put me in the wrong category and I didn't submit it for that and now I don't win because they're against me. That kind of shit. Yep. Like that is always a kind of a conspiracy that certain painters will have that for why they didn't place well. They moved the goalpost on me when after I painted the model
last second,
didn't have a chance to actually ever compete.
And here's the thing, the funny thing is the rumors have suggested that for 20 years, but Games Workshop has yet to do that. Where at the last second they spring something on people that takes something away from them.
Right.
And so it's funny is the rumors have always suggested that's about to happen and then it doesn't. And the pattern is that it doesn't.
God, man, it's almost like websites that spread those rumors which just like thrive on how many people click on them and read that article or something.
It's like they bait them into it.
Yeah. They bait them into clicking.
They bait them into clicking.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It's almost like you benefit and you thrive on the outrage.
On the internet, though, I can't believe it's gone that far.
I know.
It's on the internet now where people are outraged.
You were reminiscing about how the internet used to be funny.
It did.
Now it's just sad.
Now it's just sad. I remember when bait shops sold minnows and worms, and now it sells clicks.
And when I mean sad, all I need to do is go and get something to eat to drown, to cover up all my sorrow.
Get Modelo number 5
Especial
and something unhealthy to eat.
Yeah, like some hot dogs that have been in the microwave and then re-refrigerated
and then re-microwave so they split.
Oh man, that is like one of the most disgusting things I can think of. Is a hot dog that you microwave and let get cold again. That is wow.
We could eat something
else
right now.
Gross. I would love to eat something else. But
we could say there's something else next to the hot dog in the fridge.
Yeah. Let's see.
All right.
Thanks for joining. We hope you enjoyed. Follow us for more of our weekly episodes on YouTube podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean. You can follow myself and Llama on Instagram. We are at Llama Paints Minis and Hyena Paints Minis. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. And as always, we'll catch you next time.